Tuesday's World Cup match between Belgium and the United States was record-breaking in terms of live streams and probably lost productivity in the United States for a soccer game. Even though the U.S. has bowed out of the tournament, this country is certainly now a soccer nation. And that scares conservative commentator Ann Coulter, who says the growing interest in the sport is a sign of the nation's moral decay. My next guest, Peter Beinart, sees things a little differently. He is the Associate Professor of Journalism and Political Science at the City University of New York and a contributor to The Atlantic. Peter, you say that people like Ann Coulter worry about this and are distressed about it because it wears away at the fact that the United States has been a kind of country apart from essentially the entire rest of the world on this one issue, on this one sport.
Right. Ann Coulter basically believes that part of what makes America great is that America is fundamentally different from the rest of the world. And she compares soccer to the metric system. If the rest of the world adopts it, per se, it's a good thing if the United States stays apart from it. And I think what you're seeing with soccer is that the willingness to embrace soccer and the willingness to allow America's new immigrants to remain soccer fans without that compromising their Americanism reflects a shift in the United States. We have a less nativist sports culture, and we are more open, at least some groups in the United States, young people, immigrants, political liberals, are more open to liking the same kinds of things that people in other countries do. Things don't have to be ours and ours alone.
And in a sense, part of what the attraction of soccer is that you are sharing the sport with the rest of the world, sharing the enthusiasm, following something everybody in the world is following.
Right, and I think this reflects a larger shift. I mean, it's really fascinating. If you look at the Pew polling, for instance, young Americans are far less likely than older Americans to say that America's culture is superior or to say that America is the greatest country in the world. Now, Ann Coulter may see that as pessimism and defeatism and declinism, but I actually think what it reflects is a more cosmopolitan temperament, more of a recognition that America has things to learn from the rest of the world, and that, in fact, perhaps we have to learn from the rest of the world if we're going to remain a successful country.
Now, the kinds of people you were describing as soccer fans in the United States, younger immigrants, children of immigrants, this all sounds a little bit like this sort of Obama coalition.
That's exactly right. And in fact, if you look at the states where soccer is most popular, they're overwhelmingly blue states, and the states where soccer is least popular are red states. The only difference between the soccer coalition and the Obama coalition is that African Americans are right now not such big soccer fans, and of course important parts of the Obama coalition. So African Americans have a disproportionate devotion to basketball if you look at the polls. So I think you can see the Obama coalition as essentially soccer plus basketball. The Republican coalition is essentially baseball plus golf plus NASCAR. And then football is our one bipartisan sport because that's the one that everybody loves.
And you really do see this as part of a broader shift where you've been tracking the numbers that the kinds of things that would define American exceptionalism are declining, particularly among young people, right?
Right. So, for instance, if you look at religiosity, which has historically been a dividing line between America and Europe, you find that that amongst younger people there's much less of a stark divide, not because Europe has changed, but because younger Americans are much less likely to be affiliated. If you look at questions about patriotism or even chauvinism, is our country better, you also find that the gap that exists amongst older Americans is virtually disappeared for younger people. And I think this is part of the openness to the embrace of soccer. It's the same reason that younger people are far much more likely than older people to say they like the United Nations. There's a willingness to accept the idea that America is one of many nations. Yes, we have a special affinity for it, but it doesn't mean that in some objective sense, us and everything that we do are necessarily better. You know, in a way, I think that famous and much attacked line of Barack Obama's, you remember, where he said, I believe that America is exceptional and the Greeks think that Greece is exceptional, which the conservatives attacked him so for. I think actually a larger and larger number of Americans, especially young Americans, that's basically their view too.
And finally, what do you say to people who say, I think Ann Coulter among them, that soccer is just boring, that they play for 2 hours and it's 0-0 at the end of it?
Well, look, you know, you and I both come from families where people play cricket, right? They play for 5 days into a draw. So the truth of the matter is these things are subjective. It is hard if you didn't grow up, you know, with your father, your mother, your grandparents watching the game as a child. It's always hard to have the same emotional connection that you do to games that you grew up, were part of the culture, of the fabric of your life. I think that's actually true. But in a way, this is good. This is what Americans need to do. Americans need to be willing to learn, to put in effort, to realize that there are things that don't come naturally to us. And I think that's actually part of the spirit that America needs, particularly at this moment of globalization, at a time when America is, the power dynamic is shifting, and Americans have to be able to learn from the world and compete in a new way.
All right, soccer today, cricket tomorrow. Peter Beinart, thank you very much.
Thank you.